Hello, scholars. Good evening. Welcome, and thank you for watching this very riveting version of the French Revolution. So I believe this is where we left off last class, and so I'd like to continue with a little bit of your time to go into more of the French Revolution and, of course, end with Napoleon Bonaparte. So basically, we talked about Robespierre and his ability to use the popularity of the sans-culottes or the Paris Commune to take control of Paris and of France. And basically what he created was the Committee of Public Safety, and once he has the power, he has a planned economy. And if you can't recall what a planned economy is, a planned economy is kind of like a precursor to socialism, which totally freaked out propertied classes, wealthy, noble, because it's introducing what we'll eventually talk about in January with Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, the socialist communist concepts. He's going to control prices. There'll be no supply and demand. He controls everything. And eventually, this is fantastic because it's supplying bread to the armies, food to the armies, which is a big part of this time period in France. But on the home front, he introduces the Reign of Terror, which is kind of fascinating because so many aspects of the French Revolution and Bonaparte will be able to compare to Hitler. So keep that in mind. The Reign of Terror is basically his attempt to kill all enemies of the revolution. And one thing to keep in mind is that he was not particular. It didn't matter if you were rich, pretty, skinny, fat, it didn't matter. If he assumed you were against the revolution, you would die. In addition, female groups that were attempted to were formed. This was an opportunity for females to meet, to talk. Think of like your moms at the book club, a way for females to be involved. They weren't allowed to be involved. He did attempt to close them. I have on here, if you notice, Charlotte Corday and Jean Marat. Just take a quick moment to talk about them for 2 seconds. Jean-Paul Marat, he was a very educated bourgeoisie. Unfortunately, he had a skin disease which made the majority of his life he had to spend in a bathtub. And he also was the author of a newspaper, the L'Ami du Peuple, and one of his main jobs was to collect lists of enemies, and these lists would then be analyzed, given to Robespierre who needed to be killed. Charlotte Corday is a Girondist, and she blames Marat for the violence, the radicalization of the revolution. So she decides that if she can kill him, she can stop the revolution. So she goes to his house. Nurse lets him in. She has a knife tucked into her dress, and she stabs him to death. Unfortunately, it did the opposite of what she expected, and he became a martyr. And there was like a 3-day funeral, and his bathtub was put almost like the cross, like a Christ-like figure. So it did the opposite of what she had hoped, and she was eventually killed by the guillotine. One other thing, if you notice right here, one other thing that Robespierre did was he introduced what's known as the Republic of Virtue. He was trying to congratulate good citizens, and he also wanted to completely informally change France, and how he did that was, much like Hitler, new art, new songs. One of the big things he did was he tried to de-Christianize France, which, imagine, this is not going to work. Over 95% of France is Catholic, very, very heavy Catholic. He also introduced a new calendar on the next slide. I have a breakdown of what this calendar looked like, but basically you have 3 weeks in a month. There's no more Sunday. All religious holidays are taken out, and what people celebrate were revolutionary holidays. And here we can move on to the next one. So what you're looking at is an example of the calendars. All of the months, they were renamed decades. They were renamed, and it would be something like Thermidor would be July, because it's named after the temperature. Here is an image of Charlotte Corday, Girondist, eventually killed. Jean-Paul Marat. This is a Jacques-Louis David painting. He's an extremely important painter during this time. He's a painter during not only the Revolution, but also Napoleon Bonaparte. And he takes us from Rococo and Baroque into this very neoclassical, realistic time period. If you're looking at this image, he almost looks like an angel. He doesn't look violent or like he was stabbed to death. Thermidorian reaction, what you're looking at, Thermidor, this is basically the month of July. This is what I was just speaking about before. What's going to happen are Robespierre's own friends are going to get sick of him. They're going to realize this is positively ridiculous, and so there's this whole conspiracy to bring him down. And um, he's this master orator, and when he's giving a speech, several of the men, they start howling like wolves. And well, guess what? He attempted to kill himself. He shot himself in the jaw. Unfortunately for him, the master orator uh, basically took away his ability to speak right before he died. So after he's dead, it's what's known as called the Thermidorian reaction, and basically it's the Girondins taking back power. And it does get a little ridiculous because they start killing the leftover mountains, much like the mountain started killing them a couple years ago. Anyway, a new constitution is written. If you notice the date, 1795, and with this new constitution, we have a new government known as the Directory. It's 5 men. It's extremely corrupt. Imagine if you had 5 teachers in one classroom. That would be super obnoxious. All 5 trying to compete for knowing everything, competing for your attention. Pretty terrible. These men, very corrupt, wasn't great. So basically, the French are going to get sick of the Directory, which leads us into the conversation of Napoleon Bonaparte. And in my opinion, but Napoleon is one of the most fascinating leaders. He was born in Corsica, and if you notice over here we have Italy. Corsica is right there, and during this time, Corsica was part of France, which is why it's not that weird. He had a funky accent. However, as he grew up, he wasn't a fantastic student in school. He was good in math, but he wasn't a great student. He had pretty awkward social skills, but he did go to military school, and he was able to rise in the French military. He There's a whole side story to his first girlfriend named Desiree. When I return next week, I hope to tell you the story of Desiree. He's actually engaged to her, and this is not a very nice guy. Lets her go without telling her, and she finds out. Anyway, long story, next week. So he married Josephine. She's older than him, and she also is a widow, and she has 2 children with another man. I have her here. Interesting tactics as a commander of the French army. Here's something I think is kind of interesting is instead of being really tough on the low-level army guys, he was extremely tough on the officers. And, he was known to have a beer with the low-level guys. And why I think that's very noteworthy is because it made the low-level guys really loyal to him. And that nationalism and loyalty helped him. And the officers were kind of like, what's going on? It was also like this, we have to please him. So it was just a smart guy. 1797, he was told by the by the director, I apologize, by the Directory to attack England. He knew he wasn't prepared. He knew he wouldn't win, so he decided to attack England and Egypt. He ended up abandoning the troops there and returning to Paris. Random fun fact, do you know the Sphinx? If you don't know the Sphinx, Google that real quick. But the Sphinx is that big thing in Egypt without the nose. And there's this rumor that he had his troops practice firing at it, and that's what knocked its nose off. That is not true. Do not repeat that story. False. What did he do in France? Okay, so 1799, what happened? He overthrew coup d'etat, he overthrew the Directory, and he became the sole ruler of France. He named himself consul for life. Basically, what that means is there were other consuls, like men below him. He was first consul. This is just paving the way for him in 1804 to become, to name himself emperor. There's a real famous painting I'll show you in a second by Jacques-Louis David, where he takes the crown from the Pope's hand and crowns himself. He somehow managed to turn his awkward ways into being extremely charismatic, extremely popular. People in France are still obsessed with this man. He introduced what's known as the Napoleonic Code. This is one of the few documents that has touched almost every single continent in the entire world. Louisiana still uses it today. If you decide to go to law school and become a lawyer in Louisiana, you will be studying that. Old nobility. This is kind of cool. When the nobles were fleeing France because of the French Revolution, he brought them back of France. France economy, disaster. He stabilized it. He stabilized the currency. He stabilized the taxes, made everything more efficient. Catholic Church, kind of cool. Robespierre took it away. He's like, hello, this isn't going to work. Even though he's atheist, he realizes the majority of his country is Catholic, so he knew he needed to bring it back. He made friends with the Pope. He said, dude, Let's make Catholicism the state religion. However, we're keeping the land that was confiscated during the revolution. Boom, everybody's happy. Domestic policies, everything under there you can figure out. It's really quite simple, from basically becoming just a true hero, kind of sort of free speech and free press, education, humongously important. Before Napoleon, what made you cool was how much money you had. He made education super cool. Metric system, if you don't know what that is, do me a favor and Google it real quick. Here are some portraits. One other thing to remember, a lot of people say that he was self-conscious of his hand, which is why he stood like this. False. He had stomach cancer, was in a lot of pain. This is the painting I told you about where he's taking the crown from the Pope and placing it on his head. A few more portraits. Josephine, moving right along. Multiple wars with Austria, Britain, and Russia. Again, he's so incredibly talented with his army. Nationalism, such an important N-word for the rest of the year, made him so successful. Napoleon's grand empire, with all of his successes, he had the French, the core, that's France. The dependent states, basically the dependent states that he excuse me, took over, and the Allied states, Austria and Russia, that were kind of forced to be friends with him, kind of sort of. In the dependent states, he put his brother as the king of Spain. He put his sister as the queen of northern Italy. So states that he took over, he would put his friends and family in charge. The Holy Roman Empire, he knocks it away and he renames it to the German Confederation of the Rhine. This is extremely important for our discussions in January. Two major reasons for his fall: Britain and nationalism. Britain is queen of the seas and also rising up as the hegemonic power. He's also the type of guy who, if he knows he can't beat you, he's gonna. And then nationalism. I told you 2 seconds ago that nationalism is going to help him win, but it's also going to bring him down because other countries start to get nationalistic against him. Battle of Trafalgar, he attempted to take out Britain. He's unsuccessful. This is very important because Hitler's going to do the same thing and be unsuccessful. Nationalism, like I said before, the Spanish Peninsular War fought. This is true guerrilla warfare. Goya has a real famous painting about the atrocities that occurred from this fight. This is really important because this is foreshadowing what we're going to talk about in January with the unification of Germany. He was not having children with Josephine, so he decided to divorce Josephine, and he married Marie Louise, 18 years old, and she was also the niece of Marie Antoinette. Kind of ironic that the French Revolution started over trying to kill a Habsburg, and he marries a Habsburg. It's kind of funny. Arc de Triomphe. This is Marie Louise. She actually, I know that doesn't look like a boy, but that is a boy. They did have a boy, Napoleon II, son of Rome, or king of Rome, sorry. This is the Goya painting I told you about. Very bloody, very depressing. Trafalgar, British painter. Again, a lot of violence. This is, kind of glorizing Britain. We'll talk about him in January, but still, he is a big early guy with German nationalism. Marie Louise, blah, blah. Okay, so let's kill Napoleon. So Napoleon invaded Russia. Why? Because he was super mad at them because they refused to obey the continental system. If you can't remember the continental system, this was his way of trying to suffocate the Brits by not trading with them and telling everyone else not to trade with them. Russia didn't obey. Invading Russia was very similar to Hitler invading Russia, general winter. What's basically going to happen is he is going to be exiled to Elba. He's